Super Mario 64 is a classic game developed by Nintendo and released as a launch title to Nintendo 64. It was their first attempt at taking Mario into the 3D space. No, I'm not gonna do this. I don't need to give you a history lesson on Mario 64. You know what it is. Everyone does. Mario 64 is a launch title for the Nintendo 64. Really? I thought it was for the Xbox. Get in there. Let's just skip to why I'm making this review. If you think about it, it's pointless to make a review on this game. A point of reviews is to not only inform people on their purchases on some games, but to be used by the people who created it to make improvements on their next project. But, Nintendo has already learned from Mario 64 and has made much more polished games. They clearly know what they're doing. They don't need Mr. Pretends to know more to tell them how to improve. Secondly, everyone and their grandma has owned or played Mario 64 at one point, so you don't need me to help you decide whether this game is for you. So why am I making this review? Because I feel like it. I think Mario 64 is an interesting game to talk about. Let's not waste any more time. I don't want the viewing of this video to be one of your regrets when you're lying on your deathbed. The game starts with Princess Peach inviting us to the castle for some cake. Okay, quick side tangent, but what exactly is Peach's position of power here in the Mushroom Kingdom? Is she their leader? If she is, then why is she not Queen Peach? And if she's still the princess, then where's the king? We saw him in Mario 3, but he's never showed up after that, so I guess he died. So I guess that would make Peach the leader? But we never see her do any kind of royal duty, so someone else has to be it. But who? Is it Toadsworth? Well, it can't be him, because he got, assassinated. Maybe there is no real leader of the Mushroom Kingdom, and it just lives in anarchy as Princess Peach lives comfortably in her castle. Anyway, after we see the message, Mario shows up and we start in this huge open area. There's a lot of stuff to play around with. There's trees to climb, to jump off of. There's a small patch of water that you can swim around and drown Mario in, and it's fun. When I first played this area, I thought it was a little dull, to be honest. This open section really serves no other purpose, and with a couple of exceptions, there's really no secrets to find. But it's important to remember the time period this came out and the thought process behind the developers. Before this, 3D hasn't been invented yet, so it's to let people ease into this newfound power of walking at 360 degrees, and also getting used to holding this monstrosity. It looks like a controller with a goatee. They had a very large area that a young kid could probably spend hours jumping around in and getting used to this new way of playing the game. So even though nowadays it's not really necessary, I understand why it's here. Since we're on the topic of controls, we should talk about them. Mario 64 is interesting in that, unlike previous Mario games where Mario pretty much just had one basic jump, here you have plenty of different types of movement options. Here you have the regular jump, double jump, triple jump, side somersault, the backflip, the long jump, and the wall jump. It gives Mario a vast utility that not only is fun to play around in, but makes traversing the world much easier and interesting. See something in the distance? Use a long jump. A platform just a little too high? Use a backflip. Need something really high up? Well, you got a wall jump for that. The worlds are designed so not only that you can explore them, but explore them in your own way. The game doesn't really restrict or punish you for going on the beaten path. They are immensely rewarding to pull off, which is what you want from your game. The one thing I will say about the controls though is that while they are very versatile, they're also quite loose. Mario's a little on the heavy side, so he doesn't control all that well when you try to maneuver him in the air, which makes correcting jumps and doing precise platforming a little bit of a struggle. Now, in the beginning of the game, this isn't really a problem since the game focuses on exploration over obstacle-based platforming, but as the game goes on, it seems to lean more into the platforming side of things. Now, this still isn't necessarily a problem since most of the time the platforming is built with this kind of control in mind, but there are some stages late into the game that do try to require more precision, and since the controls weren't made for that, it makes going through stages like Tiny Huge Island a pain in the butt. When the island is small, you have to be careful because you can very easily fall off. I think this is why I always found myself disliking the controls by the end of the game. They're not bad, they're quite good for exploration and properly designed platforming, but unfortunately later stages use that design less and less, so we go from varied controls to frustrating controls, and that makes me sad. Peach's castle is basically one giant elaborate level select. You see, you must enter each level through these giant portals, and the castle is huge. There's a lot of secrets that you can find, which really plays into the whole exploration aspect of the game. I do wish we could pick the stages from a menu, but that's a minor gripe, and while playing I never was really bothered by having to travel around to get to the levels. It's also easy to remember where each level is since the castle is designed so that each floor is distinct, and they're never really that obtuse to find. Even the hidden levels are easy once you know where they are. My only complaint is that I wish the castle felt more lively. We have toads, but they're kind of just stuffed in the corners and don't really say anything interesting. It's like, hey Mario, do you know how to jump? Hey, have you explored the castle thoroughly? Hey Mario, have you gotten your prostate checked? You know, basic stuff like that. In Ocarina of Time, you had this town with different people and they all had something to say. It was all lively and nice. Wish it was more like that. Well, anyway, let's dive headfirst into the painting and talk about Bomb Battlefield, because this stage is fantastic. Like seriously, I think it's one of the most well thought out and designed levels, not just in this game, but any game. It does so much right that I in fact want to dedicate an entire part of this video talking about this level exclusively and looking at every aspect of it. So I hope you like this song, because we will be here for a while. So the level starts off with you being informed that the Bob-ombs are at war with each other, and they ask you to help stop King Bob-omb. Very interesting choice on Nintendo's part to make the very first level a literal war zone, but hey, the first enemy you encounter is a Goomba. Now, since Mario is now in the third dimension, jumping on these corks with feet is a challenge. So they added a punch so you can fight them like a real Italian plumber. You can take out enemies multiple ways in this game, jumping, punching, diving, ground pound, and so on. It makes Mario very versatile, so he's never truly defenseless against a foe. The second enemy you encounter is these Bob-ombs. They are a great enemy because they're one of the few that don't hurt you on impact, so it gives the player a chance to get away or take it out. It also teaches the player how you can pick up objects, since your first instinct when you see a bomb is to punch it. And since punching and picking things up are the same button, players will be taught about this mechanic. Not only that, but picking up objects will play an important role later, not just in this level, but in the game as a whole, so teaching the player early on that they can do this is important. That's probably why they littered this area with Bob-ombs, so they give the player multiple chances to learn the move. Before moving on, I should mention that there are signs everywhere telling you that you can do certain actions, which may seem a little direct in your face, but like I said, this game is the first time that many kids probably experienced the 3Ds, so literally spelling it out for them made sense. I do wish it kind of felt more natural though, like in the context of the world, who's putting these signs going, hey, press the B button to pick up a box? I think it would have been cool if it was written as if King Bob-omb wrote it telling his soldiers useful info. It still would have been a little weird, like could you imagine fighting in a war and there's just signs everywhere reminding you how to fire your gun, but I still think it would have been nice. Anyway, back to this area. It's great because it's made to look very eye-catching. There's enemies in the way and the camera's facing it when you enter the level. It's much larger than the intended path, so many people most likely went down here first to find enemies and, interestingly enough, a dead end. You'll see a button and a psychedelic on the other side with no way to get to it, which forces the player to go back and find another way to get to the goodies. This is another great way to tell the player that the level isn't just going to be from point A to point B and is encouraging exploration, which helps cement this new Mario into the player's head. And that's all just from this one area here. There are many more incentives for the player to explore. When you go up the ramp, you're greeted with a large landscape that you can go look around in. There's coins, a mushroom, and a hill with something that you can't enter yet. After that, you go here and you see a star in a cage. Now, first-time player isn't going to know how to get to the star, so they just pass it, in which they encounter these poles and be taught that they can ground pound. Once they learn that, they can make the connection that the pole the chain chomp is attached to can also be butt stomped, so they go back, ass smack it, and get the star. And once they do and jump back into the level, they will discover that it actually wasn't the star that was originally selected. The developers made it so that the first star many people will see or encounter is the last star in the mission select lineup, so a player will see that each level has 6 regular stars to collect. Now on a second playthrough of the level, most players might go around and explore the level more carefully to see if they can find other stars, and many of them probably will, such as the 8 red coins or the 100 coin mission. Now after this section, you have this mountain you must scale up. A small thing I like is the teleportation here. These are scattered all over the place and are fairly well hidden, but what makes this one very clever is that it's the very first one many people will encounter because it's placed in a very obvious spot, in the wall where King Bob-omb's very large and metallic balls were coming out of, and since people, will want to check it out, they'll be teleported up to the top. After making it to the top, King Bob-omb will face you, and this is where the smaller Bob-ombs come into play, since defeating him uses the same method of defeating the smaller Bob-ombs, picking them up and throwing them. And just in case you didn't learn about picking up Bob-ombs, King Bob-omb will literally tell you, because he is inept. Well, after you beat him, you get the first star, and now these Bob-omb buddies will let you use their war cannons to fire yourself across the map, which is really cool. They put one at the start so you can just jump right into it and blast anywhere in the level, making traveling easier. You can also now face Koopa the Quick, which teaches the player that some stars are locked behind other stars. Now you may be thinking to yourself, wow, this Bob-omb battlefield analysis is kind of scattered, and yeah, it kind of is. It's kind of hard to talk about Bomb Battlefield in any coherent way since the level itself is all over the place. And I don't mean that as a negative. It's intentionally putting stuff out of order, like encountering the last star first, learning the pulls after you pass the one, attached to the chain chomp, the one-up mushroom behind the dead end. It's all done in a way to get the player to explore, because that's ultimately the main point of Mario 64, exploring. Every Mario game before this point has just been about getting to the end, so this is a drastic change in level progression, and it was handled by putting everything all over the place. And they didn't just put them randomly, they carefully thought about how the player will traverse the level and put multiple points to purposely lead the player off the beaten path and do things in their own way. This is further emphasizing the overall game and that you don't need to get every star. In fact, once you collect your first star, an entire level opens up. So if you really wanted to, you can just abandon Bomb on Battlefield and check out this new level. You can go from level to level collecting any star in any order, and if you don't like a certain mission, you don't have to do it. Just go somewhere else. This is one of the biggest parts of Mario 64's identity and why people like it so much. It's great that the game gives you so much freedom in how you want to approach things, and Bomb on Battlefield is constructed in such a perfect way to emphasize that. There's only one minor complaint I have with the level. It's that I think it would be better if there was a lot more coins in it. Like, just litter the place with it so the players more naturally come across the 100 coin star. Filling the level with more coins is a piece of advice that most of these levels and also my wallet could take, but whatever. Now that Bomb on Battlefield is out of the way, I want to give a little attention to each of the other levels. Now, I'm not going to go into as much detail with these because I don't want anyone watching this to die of old age before making it to the end, but I'll still talk about certain unique aspects of each level and what they do to differentiate themselves from each other. Next up is Whomp's Fortress. The first thing that you'll immediately notice is that it's much more dangerous compared to the Bomb on Battlefield because now you can fall into the endless void of Mario's empty heart and also off the cliff. In Bomb on Battlefield, you can only die if you got hit enough times, so Whomp's Fortress introduces the first insta-death way to die, which is emphasized since one of the first things you see in this level is these wall creatures that like to push you off the edge because they're jerks. And also these floors that can pull out from underneath you. It's really dangerous. There's also now these enemies that can crush you, which take a third of your health, which further shows the increased challenge. Aside from that though, the level isn't that much different from Bomb on Battlefield. There's multiple ways to go. You can collect stars out of order. There are enemies that act similar to the final boss that teach you how to beat him. When you do, the level slightly changes, presenting more opportunities. It's a great level, one of my personal favorites in fact, but I already talked about most of this stuff in Bomb on Battlefield, so let's go ahead and move on to Jolly Roger Bay. Here we have our first water level, and it's great. I guess since we're here, we should talk about the water controls. The controls work well enough. Mario swims forward when you hit the A button, and you can steer him in any direction. They're surprisingly fluid for being the first Mario 3D platformer. In fact, the game that came out after this, Mario Sunshine, actually has worse water controls. My only complaint is that Mario is a bit slow, and when you're traveling across a large pool of water, it can get aggravating. You just start mashing the A button a whole lot. Although it can be pretty thrilling when you're close to drowning, you're trying to get to the top and just barely making it with a slither of health left. It's rewarding. Since the swimming controls work real well, that makes Jolly Roger Bay a real fun stage to play through. It gives a new way of exploring and unique challenges that the standard levels just do not offer, like chasing an eel with a star following it. Since your health meter and the air meter are one and the same, it can make some pretty exciting and intense challenges. There's a couple of odd design choices in this level though, like this section over here. This area is huge. It has a giant pillars trying to crush you, Goombas give you a spook, but it's only used for this one star and some blue coins. Seems kind of like a waste. Another thing is that the stage has two stars that are almost identical, where you have to open these chests in the right order. Now, reusing mission ideas isn't inherently bad, but I just think it's kind of weird that they're both in the same level. One more thing I like to mention is that there's this invisible block here. You see, some stars require special powers that you can only unlock later in the game. There are three of them, the wing cap, the metal cap, and the invisible cap. They're quite well hidden, and you have to think outside of the box to access them. While these power-ups are really cool and lead to very unique challenges, I feel like they're underutilized. Like, I could probably count the required caps for stars on my one hand. It's not that big of an issue, but I thought I would bring it up. Well, the next stage is Cool Cool Mountain. And I just want to say, I'm only realizing this now as I'm writing the script, but this level is not called Cool Cool Mountain. It's called Cool Cool Mountain. Like, the first cool is like, hey, that's cool, like as in awesome. And the second cool is like literally cool, like it's cold, like a fridge. So it's Cool Cool Mountain. Cool Cool Mountain. This level starts you off at the top of a mountain, and you can make your way down it by either going down this chimney like Santa Claus. Mario is red and fat. He just needs the beard down this slide, or just jump off the side of this cliff if you're feeling really daring. It's a pretty okay level. The slide section is really fun, and you have these coins lined up so you can find a secret. My only real complaint with this level is right here. Wall kicks will work. What the heck is that supposed to mean? Wall kicks will work. Well, I hope so. You're the one who programmed the game. Why are you telling me this? Yeah, some of these star mission names are
kinda crap. They're supposed to act as hints so the player can look for something that the level title specifies, like the eel would like to come out and play. Probably has something to do with the eel. Star on the flying island. Most likely has to do with the star on the giant flying island. Now tell me, what is wall kicks will work supposed to mean? That the programmers are confident in their abilities to make functional controls? Nothing! It tells me nothing. It doesn't help that this star is tucked away in the corner here that can only be accessed by cannon, and if you miss, you'll fall off the stage and have to start all over again. It's terrible. There's a couple more of these terrible mission names, but this is the one that stuck out to me the most. Aside from that, it's a pretty standard level. You travel down a mountain, which is fun, but let's move on to the next stage, Big Boo's Haunt. Before we even talk about the stage itself, let's discuss the way you enter the level. You have to go back here, where I presume is Princess Peach's secret graveyard, because how else would you explain all these ghosts? Well, you had to football tackle this one to get access to the level. It's weird. It's the only level that's like this. Even some of the other hidden or unorthodox stages have you jumping through some kind of portal. This one seems like something you'd find for like one of the castle's secret stars, but I guess the level's really not all that hard to find either, since the boo who has it sticks out like a sore thumb, so maybe I'm overthinking it. Anyway, Big Boo's Haunt, it's a really cool level. It's structured in a much more compact way compared to the rest of the levels, and after you get the first star, the whole house immediately becomes available to explore. What I like is that there are many different unique rooms with different kinds of challenges to overcome, and how easy it is to not get lost since all the rooms connect back to the central hub. I also really like the atmosphere. It's all dark and spooky, and the music reflects that really well. It's an overall really great level. My only complaint is that 3 missions are very similar, where you have to defeat this big boo. They differentiate them enough so they're not too similar, but I still feel that it was a little ridiculous. And the next stage is Hazy Maze Cave. This is not a good level. It's very annoying to travel in, and it's quite easy to get lost and not know where to go, which I know is kind of the point. It is a maze after all, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating. This whole level is like if Nintendo made Metroid, but bad. The reason why games like Metroid are fun is because when you explore, you're rewarded with power-ups and upgrades that will open up new pathways to make traveling easier. But here, there's nothing like that. You just stumble your way through the level until you find a star in which you get booted back to the same starting point to stumble through the level again. It's just not that great to explore, and in a game where that's just like the whole point, that is a pretty major problem. Many of the individual missions aren't that fun either, like gathering the 8 red coins and the 100 coin mission. In fact, it's probably the worst level for that kind of mission. Since I brought it up, let's quickly go over the 100 coin missions in this game. On paper, they sound like they could be a lot of fun, going around the level, collecting as many coins as possible to get the star. It doesn't even kick you from the level either, so you can nab an extra star in a mission if you want. But the problem with nearly every 100 coin mission is that coins are actually quite scarce. Like when you reach 80 or 90, you really start to struggle to find any more, especially in stages like Hazy Maze Cave, where they're so spread out that finding 100 coins is a pain in the butt. Like I said earlier, if they were just to litter these stages with coins, then it wouldn't have been a problem. Anyway, the next stage is Bowser's Lethal Lava Land, one of my personal favorite stages, and is the complete opposite of Hazy Maze Cave. In that it was a giant labyrinth. Here it's literally just a square and you can see everything. It's quite the drastic change. It's like one day you were trapped in a corn maze and the next day you're trapped in a cubicle with lava. It's really fun. There's a shell over here so you can surf across the lava. And if you have unlocked the wing cap, then you can basically bypass any obstacle, which while as fun as that is, kind of the biggest problem with this level. For being a place filled with lava and a really evil atmosphere, this is probably one of the easiest levels in the game since you can just bypass those obstacles. To be fair, the shell is somewhat hidden and you have to take a leap of faith over to access it. I imagine most kids didn't unlock the wing cap yet, so maybe I shouldn't be thinking of this as making the levels too easy, but just the game rewarding me for doing a good job looking around and exploring, which is cool. But even without the shell and the wing cap, this level is a breeze. The lava doesn't insta-kill you, and the place has plenty of coins, so you're never in any real danger. And the actual challenges themselves are kind of underwhelming, as the easiest red coin mission since they're all in the same place, and 2 of the missions is just to knock these bullies into lava. But I'm complaining so much about the level being easy, but at the end of the day, does it really matter if the level's still fun? Not really. Like, yeah, I would have liked more challenge, but it's just so cool taking daring jumps and just stumbling your way through. It's probably the most open level in the whole game since it's just a flat square, so you're free to do whatever you want. The next level is Shifting Sandland. This level is weird. You see, you have this area out here. It's designed like any other level, but what makes it different is that the pyramid itself acts like its own level when you enter it. So it's like a level inside a level. The thing about the pyramid is that it's almost designed somewhat like a Zelda dungeon. To access it, you have to stand on these 4 pillars, and the inside has some elements that would fit right at home in Zelda, like the sand slide segment. This boss fight feels right out of Zelda. I heard that 64 and Ocarina were developed around the same time, and they influenced each other in a lot of ways, and you can really feel it here. And one level level later in the game. Despite this, it's still a fun level since the main focus is still getting past obstacles with Mario's moveset. It's just the way you go about it requires a little more thought. I like it. The biggest problem with this level though is that in the pyramid there are 2 stars that are quite high up, and to get to them you have to reclimb the same obstacles with no differences between them. It's kind of annoying. Unfortunately, this problem isn't exclusive to Shifty Sandlands. In fact, after this stage, many other stages kind of start going downhill with frustrating designs that bring down the overall experience. But we'll get there when we get there. The next stage is Dire Docks, which is like Jolly Roger Bay, but worse in every way. First of all, one of the missions is another open up all the chests mission, which is the 3rd time they reused that one. But now it's frustrating because they have these whirlpools sucking you in the whole time. And while I said the swimming controls are pretty okay, especially for the time, they still are somewhat sluggish, which makes this whole thing just much more frustrating than it should be. It doesn't help that the level is separated in 2 areas, and every time you want to start in the other section, you have to swim through this tunnel with nothing in it. Look at all this exciting gameplay that's going on right now. Do you not feel the thrill? Another thing is that this level is just far too large. In Jolly Roger Bay, the only area to swim was in this trench, and the stars in them took the advantage of the unique challenge of being underwater. But in this level, the pool is much larger, and aside from one mission where you must follow this shark, none of the missions really take advantage of the fact that you're underwater, which means it's only here to make traveling more aggravating. In fact, that's kind of like this whole level's problem. Everything feels slow. Swimming is slow, you have to wait for these pools, you have to wait for these poles, you have to go through these rings, which I swear are clearly broken. Look, I'm going through it. What is going on? The next stage is Snowman's Land. I always forget this level's in the game, and no, it's not because I have the memory of a brain-damaged goldfish. It's because it's another snow level stage. It even has the exact same music, so these levels kind of just melt together in my mind. The only thing of interest is climbing the giant snowman and trying to get past him blowing you off the top. So since I don't have anything of interest to talk about this stage, let's talk about the music instead. The music was composed by Koji Kondo, who's been composing for Mario since the original console Mario game, and they're all great, and Mario 64 is no exception. The music is quite varied compared to the other games in the series. Like, they always had different types of music, but they still usually fit together in a general style. But here you have bubbly and happy, atmospheric, calming, threatening. It's all great and really fits the tone of many of these levels quite well. The Bomb on Battlefield track is my favorite. When you first enter the level and you just hear it makes you excited to play the game. And when you enter Big Boo's Hunt for the first time and hear the foreboding track, it makes you feel incredibly uneasy. Hazy Maze K's remix of the Underground theme is one of my favorites since it's so different from the original, yet you can still recognize it. An interesting note to mention is that the music plays everywhere, in the levels, the music, the castle, but not the castle grounds, which is interesting. When you first enter the game, it's pure quiet with just birds chirping. I'm not sure why they did this, but my best guess is that they wanted the area to feel relaxing. Kids are not used to 3D, so the lack of music kind of removes any sense of urgency and lets people do things at their own pace, or at least that's what I think. There's one problem though, is that there's not a whole lot of music in the game, so they tend to reuse tracks a lot. This wouldn't normally be a problem, but one of those tracks, the one used for the slide, is used in 2 stages back to back. This song is not meant to be listened to in long periods, so it can get quite tiring. It's still a great song, but I just don't want to listen to it 10 minutes straight because it makes my brain go slowly numb. The next stage is Wet Dry World, and out of all the stages in the game, this one is the one that feels the most Zelda-like. And that's to its detriment, unfortunately. The biggest problem is that the unique mechanic in this level is just not that interesting or fun. If you want to change the water level, you have to run over these orbs, and they're pretty spaced out, which means a lot of pointless back and forth between spots just so you can have easier access to certain stars. There's also this star where you must find 5 specific points, and none of them are super obvious. So you'll catch yourself running around this world that's just not fun to travel and looking for these hidden points. There's also the Lost City, which just isn't much better. The camera is probably the worst in this section since it's so cramped. Overall, the world's not bad. In fact, if you know which mission you want to go for, you can jump into the painting at different spots to start the level at the most preferable area, which is pretty cool. But overall, this level is just kind of boring. Next up is Tall Mountain, one of my least favorite stages in the whole game. Firstly, this level is completely linear. There are a few diverging paths here and there, but for the most part, you're just going in a straight line. That means every time you enter the level, you must play through the same moments numerous times with no changes in between. Also, if you fall from a high point, you have to climb the mountain all over again. It's super infuriating. It seems at this point the game really has just gone on a downward spiral. The last few stages have become either mediocre, boring, or straight up bad. The next stage is Tick-Tock Clock, which encompasses a lot of the previous problems into one stage, having to start from the beginning each mission, more focused on platforming, very little in exploration. It's just not that great, but it does have some things going for it. The setting I think is pretty interesting, and the actual missions themselves are a lot more varied than something like Tall Mountain. And while I do think the platforming isn't this game's forte, at least getting through some of TikTok Clock's unique obstacles can be somewhat fun if you got a handle on the controls by this point. If you enter this stage while the hand is pointing at a certain number, you can change how the gears move, which makes replaying the stage a little less tedious, although that does run into an issue that some stars require some parts of the clock to be moving. So if you so happen to enter it when everything is frozen, that star is just inaccessible, which seems like a design oversight to me. And finally, we have a Rainbow Ride. This level is the complete opposite of Bomb on Battlefield. This level is one giant bottomless pit, a bunch of different platforming challenges. Instead of exploring, you have to ride these carpets on a predetermined path, and these carpets are quite slow. You're just standing around, occasionally dodging obstacles until you reach your stop. It's like riding the public bus. It's just that it's like a drag to get anywhere, because at least 4 of the stars absolutely require you to ride the carpets, and 2 of those stars are right next to each other, so you're not even doing anything different to get to it. You just turn left instead of right once you reach the ship. I believe they designed this level like this because they wanted to make it like very challenging, and they certainly succeeded, but it's challenging that it's really frustrating to get through. It's really disappointing since this is the final regular level. After this is the Bowser stage and the fight, so this stage will most likely be the last one many players will experience, which might leave somewhat of a sour taste in their mouth. Oh well. Those are all the main stages out of the way, so for the final part, let's go through the Bowser stages. The unique thing about the Bowser levels is that they're all structured in a much more linearly compared to the rest of the game, where you have a series of platforming challenges you must get through to get to the end, and they're pretty good. It's a nice change of pace from the rest of the game. They're kind of like a precursor to the Mario 3D Land and 3D World. Now, because of this, we do kind of run into the same problem as other somewhat linear worlds in the game, like Tall Tall Mountain or TikTok Clock, but I feel like the biggest difference between this stages and those ones are that these ones are strictly linear, so you only need to go through it once rather than 6 different times with no changes. Secondly, I don't feel like the platforming is set up in a way that you need to be super precise. The platforms are large and there's not a whole lot of do or die segments. I still think that the platforming in these stages aren't the best, but at least they're designed in a way so it's not frustrating. The biggest complaint I have is that these levels have 8 red coin missions, and since these levels aren't really designed for exploration, they're either really easy to find or hidden in the most bullcrap of places. They feel really tacked on. The Bowser fights, though, they're rather underwhelming. It's really clever how they expanded on the King Bomb idea, how that fight was setting you up for this one, but in the first 2 battles against Bowser, you only have to, hit him once. And while the final battle is a bit better where you have to hit him 3 times, exciting, I know, it's still just the same fight again, which makes the ending feel immensely underwhelming. I can understand the N64 wasn't the most powerful console, but I still think adding one final segment at the end really would have left a bigger impact. Well, now that we've looked at every aspect and every level of the games, let's collect our thoughts and give one final overall conclusion for this mess of a review. If we look at the stages, they seem to start off strong, but slowly over the course of the game kind of get lower in quality. It's like a straight downward slope. But even then, while I have problems with those stages, they're not terrible. Well, most of them. It's just in comparison to the masterpieces that were the early stages, they're just not as good. So I'm going to be honest, before sitting down and writing this review, I didn't really like this game at all. I thought it was frustrating and not really fun to play through, but after sifting through my thoughts and looking at each aspect of the game, I now realize I misunderstood my own feelings on it. This game has a lot of great stages that are fantastically designed and take advantage of the 3D space in a way that makes it fun to explore. But as the game goes on, the quality of it seems to go down, which is probably why I've always been so negative on it, since the more underwhelming stages are all those last ones I would experience and the ones that would stay with me. Not only that, but I also forced myself to 100% complete this game every time I played it, which was exhausting and dampened my enjoyment by the end. But the second time around, when re-recording this footage because I lost the original, I decided to go after the stars I enjoyed. And when I did, I had a much better time with the game, which I understand isn't that big of a revelation. If you ignore the stuff you don't like, then you'll like the game more. But it helped me find a newfound appreciation for the game that I didn't have before. Now, this of course doesn't necessarily excuse the not so great design of the later stages. If you're gonna make something, you might as well make it good. But still, that's kind of what makes Mario 64 a great game. You go after what you want, and if you don't like the stage, ignore it. You only need 70 stars. Heck, I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could ignore like 5 stages completely. You are free to tackle this game in any way you want. Another thing to mention is that 3D platforming was new and different. It just wanted to try a little bit of everything. So even though it might have led to an overall lesser experience when going for 100%, that's just the risk you take with experimentation. People might say that's not really an excuse, and I can understand that, but it's important to remember that this game is 25 years old. Obviously, things weren't as figured out back then as they are now. It's kind of interesting to see the ideas and solutions they had at the time. While I don't find myself really going back to this game very often, I do think it's worth playing through. That's all I really have to say. I'm pretty bad at ending my videos, so I'm just going to stop here. Hope you guys enjoy it, and see you next time. da 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 da, doom 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 da 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 da.